John, it has been a crazy kind of week in Seattle sports, but really what's happening and why it's crazy is exactly today, because today is opening day, and today is the day that Sound Up Seattle talks about NBA expansion as well as the Gonzaga loss in March Madness. So there's a lot of things that we get to talk about and what people have been waiting for with regards to the last week. So anything to say before we dive in?
Rest in peace, Zags. We'll break it down, but sad days out here west.
Yep, it's a tough one. Okay, well, here is some Coyote Picnic for the podcast listeners on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get those. We are live on YouTube. We'll stay live here. Okay, John, it is currently Thursday at 5:30 Central Time in March on opening day. Let's talk Mariners. I'm pretty excited about this Mariners season. I think you and I are both pretty excited about this Mariners season in regards to what the potential could be, right? Could potentially be the year the Mariners win the World Series. I feel like everybody and their mother has talked about this being the Mariners' potential best team. What are you kind of looking forward to for this year? What are you expecting?
I'm looking forward to hopefully being positively surprised by some of these young players on the Mariners. I know we talked a lot about Cole Young and Colt Emerson and where they could potentially fit into this starting lineup and into this Mariners season, but spring training was pretty fun this year, and there were quite a few outstanding performers that were young prospects for the Mariners. The two that really stood out the most to me, other than our two young bucks, was Rylan Thomas and Brennan Davis. Both those guys had really good spring trainings in one way or another. And both are a little bit older, too. A little bit more polished, maybe, at 25 and 26 than the 22-year-old Young and 20-year-old Emerson. So I'm really hoping one of those guys can break in a real way.
Yeah, I think what it spoke to in terms of, spring training and that outlook. First of all, Cole Young, I mean, you kind of touched on him a little bit there, but Cole Young has had just kind of an insane spring training. Over the course of it, I think I need to look it up, but I'm pretty sure he had over 7 home runs. I think at the minimum it would be 7.
6 home runs.
6. Okay.
Training, which led the team by a significant margin.
Yeah,
Brendan Davis came in second with 4.
Yeah, he was popping off, and Young I think was really capitalizing on what I would assume is pitchers ramping up and that kind of stuff. We cannot expect the guy to hit. This isn't a 25 home run season for Cole Young. I think we can both agree on that much. But it was just really, to me, impressive as to what he's been able to do and kind of the improvements and the swing approach improvements that he's been making. He's pulling the ball a little bit more, he's swinging for maybe a little bit more power, but his average was still 281 with a 349 on base. He's still, his eyesight was looking pretty good, all things considered. So really happy with that. He was striking out a bit more, selling out for power, but such is life. Yeah, I think Colt Emerson, well, we can kind of touch on this. The Mariners will probably want to service time manipulate him. I think it's pretty obvious. There's a wide open spot for them to say, hey, you want to start for the Mariners this year and see how it goes with JP and Bryce being on the IL to start the season. But it's the Mariners probably want to start him after May starts so that they can still get, I think it's a comp pick or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but there's a reason that they don't want to have Emerson play, and it is probably the service time manipulation aspect of it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And then, also worth noting, the kid's 20. As special as he could be, and as special as we hope he will be this season, while we're trying to win now and trying to compete, the odds of him coming in and being a WRC plus guy is not fantastic in this year. So yeah, if it gives you a little more control and if it opens that slot up for somebody with more experience, I'm not going to hate on it. It does. Yeah, Cole Young, I do think, is the standout just in terms of he's the only one of these young players we've talked about that played a significant amount last year. So we can basically lock him into a big role on this team. And to see him grow from, big moments aside, a pretty mediocre 211 average 4 home run season for him last year. There's a lot of room for growth.
Yeah, who are the guys that you touched on? I know you said Brendan Davis. Was it Connor Joe was the other one?
No, Connor Joe was good too, but he's older. He's 33. He's more of a vet. The other guy I was mentioning is Rylan Thomas.
Yes.
25 years old. He had a very nice spring training as well. What did he finish with? He was batting .486 at 37 at-bats. So he was probably, 15th on the team in at-bats and was hitting almost 500, including 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, finished with 29 total bases. He was a real stud. I think he finished second in total bases, despite being 15th in at-bats.
Yeah, I think he was good. He'll be. I don't know if the people remember Brendan Donovan. I think was the guy's name, but he was basically a quad A player that was coming in and out of the Mariners organization and part of the roster as people got injured and people had to move around. So I think Rylan Thomas is a guy who, if Randy goes down for a little bit, we could see a lot of Rylan Thomas here. He's kind of that fifth outfielder spot that is taken up by the combo of Victor Robles and Dom Canzone as the four. So if anybody goes down with injury, I think he's kind of the next guy up, and he's looked good. 25, he's just had a pretty solid minor league career. He's going to be that guy that's next up, like I said. Yeah, and the other guy, Brendan Davis, he started off really hot and then cooled off, I think, in spring training. Yeah. In terms of home runs, yeah.
3 home runs in the first 2 spring training games.
Yep.
Yeah, it kind of fell off. So we'll see what we get from him. That was funny. You said Brendan Donovan instead of Brendan Davis on your first attempt.
No. Brendan Donovan was 5 years ago. Is who I was thinking of.
Okay, you mean the guy we got back? You realize Brendan Donovan is our off-season signing?
No, there's no way. What? Did we get him back? I didn't even know that.
What? Remember, he was the big.
Oh no.
We love Brendan Donovan.
No. Hold on. There's a historic. There's a historic guy named Brendan Donovan.
Must be a different guy.
Late 2010s. Hold on, I got to pull him up. Brendan Donovan.
Our Brendan Donovan's 29. We got him from the Cardinals, didn't we?
We did. We 100% did. But there's another guy. It might have been Brendan Donovan. I don't know, but I know he was a quad A infielder guy who would play. This is how deep my Mariners knowledge goes. I know it exists somewhere.
That's incredible. I just assumed you were doing what I was doing, which is Brendan Davis. Forbid he plays much, because I'm going to get that confused with Brendan Donovan 10,000 times.
I'll figure it out, because every single thing you look up is oh yeah, Brendan Donovan, the guy the Mariners traded for. But I know he exists. I know he was a player. It might not have been Donovan, but I know there was that guy existed, and he was kind of the exact person I was thinking of. But
that's funny.
Moving back into the kind of general Mariners discussion, we touched on it a little bit. JP being injured and Bryce Miller being injured. How are you feeling about kind of that leading into the start of the season with regards to, it sounds like Leo Rivas is going to be the starting second baseman, and we've obviously got Emerson Hancock as the fifth starter with Logan Evans getting that Tommy John. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, second base is a concern. I don't love Rivas getting the start. I'm hoping we can maybe shuffle people around to get a player I like more on one of the bases. It does speak to, a little bit of shallowness at second and shortstop with the understanding that Colt Emerson probably is not going to take over the world this season. But even, I guess, I'm trying not to be a downer. Bryce Miller, he threw a 30-pitch bullpen session and then just kind of, walked off, so I'm not exactly sure what kind of time we're expecting him to miss. Left side oblique inflammation is what we're currently hearing, so that doesn't sound like a big miss. But with Logan Evan already on the IL with Tommy Johns, I do just get nervous with the starting pitching. It is far too early in the season for these guys to start going down.
Yeah, Emerson Hancock, and we've talked about this before, as a fifth starter is a guy that you're comfortable with, right? We have 5 guys who most teams would consider they're at least a top 2 pitcher on their team, and Bryce Miller is probably the lowest end of the totem pole there, with him and Luis Castillo kind of being on the worst end of our starting pitching staff. So Emerson Hancock as a fifth starter is totally fine. It's not somebody that, if this team for a long period of time, you're saying, hey, if Bryce is going to be down for 3 months here, that's another concern, right? Because Emerson Hancock is not a guy that the Mariners wants to be starting for a majority of this season. The good news is, if everybody else can stay healthy, and that's a big if, because obviously we've got a few guys that had injuries last year. Brian Wu has a history of injury, so he's got still a little bit of a concern there. But if we can get the rest of those 4 healthy and them to stay healthy all year, we look a lot better for the playoffs, because that fifth starter spot kind of gets taken away as you move into the postseason. So I'm not as concerned, but it is one move away from having to really reach down and grab somebody who we are not the most excited about starting. If a Logan Gilbert or George Kirby goes down with another injury, that's a bit of a concern there.
Yeah. I would say we may change into this conversation separately, but one of the biggest things I'm looking for from this season, which the Mariners have completely failed to do probably the last 5 years, is get out to a hot start.
Ugh.
It has been a long time since the Mariners were first in our division, 20 games into the season. We just, for whatever reason, the weather in Seattle, marine layer, whatever. You can argue about it, but I would just it would make a big difference for me and make a big difference in how I see this team as a potential contender for the World Series if we can jump out to like a 12-7 start. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's a long season. 162 games is a long one, but if you end up starting the season, 7-13 or whatever it is, and you have to crawl your way back and then reclaim that spot, it's just so much easier to be playing from a spot where you are the number one team and you can lose a couple games and still feel comfortable. Instead of like if you're 7-13 and you lose 2 games, now you're 7-15. Like that's 8 games you have to make up over the remaining schedule. Like, yes, it's doable, but it's not comfortable. And you like to be comfortable when it comes to the long season and the long haul as a fan. So I think you and I are both on the same terms there with regards to successful season. I think starts with a winning April and / March, these first few games of March. I think it starts with a winning record through the first month, and we can go from there. I will say it was nice and a crispy 80 degrees today where I live. And last picture I saw from my parents over in Seattle, it was dreary. So I can understand how the weather can bring you down and not have you be as hot to start off the year.
It was a horrendous start to the week weather-wise, but it's actually beautiful today. So great news for the M's. Hopefully it stays up. Yeah, I'll also just say, when we're talking about a quick start, we'll talk about this with the Zags too. But a huge part of this is kind of what are your expectations for a team? Because the Mariners have had growing expectations the last 3 seasons. And, with those growing expectations, a slow start is more acceptable. But if you're getting to the place, if you're an M's fan and you're like, this team can compete for a World Series pennant, you need, I'm totally making up this stat. Do not believe this verbatim, but I would bet you 9 out of the last 10 World Series winners were leading their division a quarter of the way into the season. I would just bet that's the case. I know it's the case with the last 2 Dodgers championships. So there's just, if you want to be one of the big boys, you got to show up in the regular season, particularly early on. And I think I'm not quite sure I think the M's are there yet. I think a lot of Mariners fans are a little more optimistic than me. But if you're going to be optimistic, it's time to see it.
Yeah, what's interesting, the national media has gotten to the point where it really seems like they're like, hey, the Mariners are probably the best American League team. Like they're the odds wise, the Yankees are a betting favorite for the AL, but that's just because it's New York and people like to bet in New York.
25% bump to all their statistics.
Yeah.
I wish I had the capital to just bet against Yankees preseason things and just like cash on that every year, but unfortunately I'm broke, so.
But yeah, so when it comes to the national media, they're all very, and I would love to pick your brain on this because obviously I don't have a ton of Mariners fans where I live, but it's like, I am still nervous about this team for this year. Like it seems like everybody thinks that this is the World Series American League, representative going into the season. And to me, it doesn't really feel like that. Like they kind of have to prove it to me. It's kind of like the Sam Darnold Seahawks thing where it's like until I see them make it and until Sam Darnold won the Super Bowl, I was still nervous about Sam Darnold being Sam Darnold. Until I see the Mariners get to the World Series, I will still be nervous about them making it. And at the start of the year to project them that highly is just really tough. But I understand that that's like for the Mariners and as an organization, I think that's what they are looking for this year. Like that is what a successful season looks like. Just making the playoffs isn't really enough for them this year, I don't think.
Yeah, if they lost in the first round, that would be a huge disappointment. I completely agree. I just think, to your point, there are some real pros and cons in the scales of this season compared to last. I think the odds of our starting and relief pitching being healthier than last year, I think there's a very good chance, even with losing Logan earlier. And, we were excellent last year, but the fact that we could be even better is, I think, part of the reason you're seeing us right up near the top in terms of betting odds to win the World Series. What some of our young guys could do to break into this lineup, that could be a big contributing factor. Brendan Donovan and what he's going to bring is a big contributing factor. But the big glaring, panic button is the fact that Cal Raleigh is not going to hit 60 home runs this year. And he might have a great season. He may even win MVP. But the odds that he's going to replicate what he did last year are minuscule. How are you going to make up that gap and then go past that to get where you need to be to, compete with a team like the Dodgers? So, yeah, I am not feeling, I feel optimistic, but, by no means am I like, okay, pencil us into the divisional rounds. I think this team needs to prove a lot of things.
Yeah, I think the good news is the A's did not take the leap that I think, would make them a threat to us. I think the Rangers took a step back probably comparatively to the last couple of years. Obviously, the Angels, they haven't been a threat in the last decade. They've kind of just said, "Hey, we're gonna suck, but we have Mike Trout, so we'll sell jerseys." That's what we'll accept here. And then the Astros, I feel like they're worse. The loss of Framber Valdez. Obviously, they made a couple big signings, but I think pitching wise, they are just. There's things that the Astros have needed to improve on that they haven't really yet. The Mariners have done a better job, I think, of plugging those holes when it comes to building their roster out. So I think the Mariners are the best team in the American League West. I think that's kind of undeniable. You can argue that the Astros still have a puncher's chance, but at the end of the day, the Mariners should win the AL West and at the very least make that kind of. I think they can be a top 2 team and get the first round bye in the playoffs. I think that's where they can be, and that's where I would like for them to be at the come playoff time.
And that's the kind of area you need to be taken very seriously. And I agree that that's a possibility. The division is looking quite possible. I do think the Astros are probably our biggest competition again, but yeah, they are at the back end of this closing window, just trying to hold it open one more year, maybe one more year after that. And at some point, they're going to have to let the window close. Maybe that's this year, maybe it's next. They are currently losing 2-0 to the A's in the top, not the A's, the Angels in the top of the 9th. Looks like they're going to start the season 0-1.
Always
Still
great.
161 games to go, but I love an 0-1 start. And I just think, Houston, our star should be rising while theirs is setting. So I wouldn't be surprised if the gap we saw last year grows by, 5 to 10 games this season. But nothing is certain.
Yeah. One more final thing. I'm going to throw it at you. I didn't actually put it on our notes, but I'm going to throw it at you, and you can either do it or not, but I'm going to make 2 bold predictions here. And my first bold prediction is that we are going to trade one of our pitchers, and I kind of at this point think it's going to be Bryce Miller. If Bryce is able to come back in the first couple months or in the first month and make 7 starts, I think Bryce, there's a real world where Bryce gets traded because Cade Anderson and Ryan Sloan are just like right in the background. We haven't really talked about them, but Cade Anderson is a guy who you could have step up halfway through the season and be a 5th starter, just like Emerson Hancock, but obviously with a higher ceiling. So that's kind of my thing is I think Cade Anderson is going to come in halfway through the season, and if we make a trade, it's going to be for a bat with one of our pitchers. I think we're finally at the point now where Bryce has not been able to make starts. He's been just dealing with injuries and that kind of stuff. So if he is able to make 10 starts and the Mariners can capitalize on any value that they can get from him, I think they're probably really concerned about his injury history. And moving forward, he's probably a guy that we could deal, which I hate to say.
Yeah,
but.
yeah, and that gets very tough. I agree with the fact that a starting pitcher is likely going out the door. And if somebody's going out the door, it's going to be Miller or Castillo.
Yeah.
Obviously, Wu and Gilbert are basically untouchable. Kirby, I guess, could be in that conversation, but he's just been very steady Eddie for the M's. I think the idea of trying to get out from Castillo before his window closes, which could be this year or next year again. He should be a Houston pitcher. His age fits right in with that roster. Or getting rid of Bryce before injuries might become a bigger part of his career. Those make sense. Between those two, that is a tough conversation. I mean, Castillo was unarguably better last season. I think he really blew our expectations for his season out of the water. That doesn't mean my expectations for him have, risen again for this season. I really don't know what to expect from him at his age with the way that he pitches. So, if their values would be similar, I think I'd rather see the team move off Castillo and hold on to Bryce. I think Bryce is a special player when he's healthy, and selling a young player low when his value is low because of injuries, I don't know about that. I'd rather sell high on a vet who had a great season and somebody thinks, okay, this guy can contribute.
I think it's a real question, right? So Castillo, I'll just pull up his contract here. He's got $24 million this year, $24,150,000. So we're just going to call it 24. Next year he's 24, and then the year after that he's got a vesting option, I think, for $25 million. So he's got another year, 2 years basically, for $50 million after this year. I was thinking he had one more year after this one. With 2 more years, I think you're looking at I think you're looking at a trade that would be a lot less value that you would get in return. So it kind of depends on what the Mariners are hoping to get from that, right? I know Castillo's a leader in the clubhouse. There's a world where we kind of let him age out of this contract and ride off into the sunset at 35, and he just probably calls his career good there, depending on how he's fallen off. But until then, I think you could get a lot more for Bryce Miller. You could talk to the Orioles about getting somebody with regards to their talent. Like, they would love a starting pitcher still. Like, they built it up a little bit, but they would still love one to replace Grayson Rodriguez. And I think Bryce Miller is more the guy that they would be looking to get. So there's a world there where you look to the Orioles for a Kobe Mayo type prospect. You could go a little further and get some picks along with Kobe Mayo. I think that's a really good fit there, and it builds some stability into the fact that JP is probably not going to be your starting shortstop in the foreseeable future. So if a Colt Emerson doesn't work out or Cole Young really struggles, like there's a way to build around it with proven players that I think the Mariners could get more with Bryce Miller. So, but that's another topic. We're on day one. The Mariners haven't even started the game yet. We're getting a little too excited there.
This came up in the injury report. We will see. I think to your point, and it is something to just watch this season, assuming we stay healthy, we have a glut of resources at starting pitcher. Turning that into, filling something that's more of a position of need, even if it would hurt, may be a valuable choice. But, who knows? I mean, if Wu goes down with an injury in his first start, Bryce Miller looking so replaceable. Yep.
Let me look. Randy, I believe he's got. Might be the last year of Randy's contract. Yeah, this is the last year of Randy's contract. So there's a world where we go for an outfielder as well and try and build an outfield position with the trade piece as well, because outfielder wise I think hitting wise in general, the Mariners have not proven to be a strong developmental core there. So we can talk about that in the future going forward. But just wanted to touch on that because there's a lot of potential moves for this team. Next up, let's talk, because we do have to kind of speed through this pod. We've got places to be. Do you want to talk Zags or do you want to talk NBA expansion? Both basketball related.
Yeah, let's talk Zags. We'll do the sad stuff first and then get to some more exciting news.
Deal. Let's break down both games.
Yeah, round one, Gonzaga played Kennesaw State, 3 seed versus 14, and we took care of business in what was a very physical, tough game. Shout out to Kennesaw State.
They played you guys well.
Yeah. Really tough Georgia players. It felt like we were playing Georgia football, to be honest with you. But, they were physical, they were big, they were good rebounders. They gave the Zags quite a scare there. At one point, I think they might have been up like 24-14. They had a big lead on us in the first half, but Zags were able to bounce back, build the lead before half, and then just hang on. So a nice win by them. No surprise, Mario was a huge part of that with 8 assists. Jalen Worley was awesome in both our tournament games. He had 12, 5, and 12 against Kennesaw. And then Davis Fogel, 17 points on 6 of 13 shooting against Kennesaw. He was our second highest scorer, which was really encouraging to see for such a young player. But then, we ran our heads into the wall against 11 seed Texas in the second round. It was a tough one, man. We played well. At one point in the second half, I think we were up like 6 or 8 points. It just felt like we were starting to pull away. And then we just lost hold of the reins. And Texas stormed back and hit some really big shots down the stretch and ended up winning 74-68. So the Gonzaga season is over. In that game, Graham Ike was quite good. Jalen Worley was awesome again. Mario, I thought, was really good with 9 and 5. But Davis Fogel really struggled. Tyon Grant Foster really struggled. Braden Smith was a total non-factor. Adam Miller was a total non-factor. My takeaway from the season was that our young guys that we went out and recruited really showed up and are incredibly promising. I really, really hope we can bring back Mario and Fogel next season. But basically all our touted, super senior transfers, Adam Miller, Braden Smith, Jalen Worley is the one that showed up. I liked Worley a lot. I'm leaving him off this list. And Tyon Grant Foster, those 3 guys were supposed to be the core of this team in a lot of ways, and they were just really close to non-factors over the course of the season. So disappointing end for the year, but this is a team that clearly needs to do a better job bringing in the right guys in the portal this coming year.
Yeah, I think what we'll have to touch on is kind of the Gonzaga future moving forward and how this season really may have changed the perspective on Gonzaga basketball a little bit. We maybe touch on that in a bit, but I want to touch on really quick the Gonzaga-Kennesaw State game. That was a game that, in terms of three-point shooting, both teams kind of didn't hit shots at all. So you were kind of either a hot spurt away from Kennesaw State stealing that one, or a hot spurt away from you guys from just like really putting that one away. You guys shot 3 for 18 from three, so that's just like, if you hit 6 threes, that's a or even greater double-digit victory, and you guys look that much better. Maybe are a little bit more confident even going into that Texas game, because considering Texas scored 74, you guys scored 68. Like, you really look at the offensive trajectory of this Gonzaga team, and it is such a step down from previous seasons with Mark Few in terms of how they performed offensively. And I do think a lot of that has to come from, people underperformed. Tyon Grant Foster, we were kind of expecting him to be that Caliph battle, 15 points off the bench, sixth man type guy. And he just never really clicked this year, I feel like. He never really got going. In terms of, the shooting, I think you guys, 4 for 16 from three against Texas wasn't very good. You just were missing some key contributors on the fringes, I think. Like, obviously Mario was great, Ike was great, but there were just, some guys needed to shoot better or be more productive, and I think that was kind of where the issues lied. So I want you to tell me how you're feeling about this team. I almost want to say organization, but it's more team-wide, moving forward in terms of they kind of need to rebuild I guess Braden Huff will be back, you expect, but they kind of need to rebuild at a few spots. Like, how do you expect them to do that?
Yeah, a ton of spots, man. This team is going to get gutted because, again, including Graham Ike, Ike, Worley, Miller, Grant Foster, Braden Smith, all of those guys were super seniors this year. They are gone. They are gone with the wind. Players that may return, again, no guarantees with NIL, but may return would be Mario, Innocenti, Davis Fogel. That's a 1-2-3. And then Braden Huff at the 5. So that is 4/5 of a starting lineup that I really like, but no 6th, 7th man, no power forward. This team is going to need a lot. And yeah, you can move Fogel to the forward. They have some flexibility with that type of thing, but whether or not it's some young guys they've been recruiting that they're going to bring in and can start right away or contribute right away, or if it's going back to the well in the transfer portal and bringing in another 4 guys like they did this last offseason, they have a lot of work to do. And I do think, for whatever reason, they did not prioritize shooting nearly enough last year. Talk about another guy that was a non-contributor. I forgot to even mention his name. Still Venter.
I didn't want to do it because you didn't even he didn't play in either. He just was a non-factor.
And we thought this team might be a really good shooting team because I was expecting Steele Venters to be like a 42% three-point shooter.
Yep. And
the same with Adam Miller. And neither one of those guys contributed to this team in a real way. So, yeah, they need to go back to the drawing board. I really like Mario, Innocenti, Fogel, Huff. I really like that. Innocenti's probably the best three-point shooter there, and it's not very good. So they need to bring in, if it's another forward that can really shoot or a couple bench guards that can really shoot, this team needs a lot of shooting help. So that is definitely what I'd prioritize.
Yeah, Innocenti, played 39 minutes in the Texas game and had 9 points, 4 for 6 rebounds. Like, he wasn't really a huge factor, but I think he's a guy who, in terms of his play, can really take a step forward. Like, I think he can build on what happened this year. And with the loss of Ike, and I think a lot of the funneling that this offense was doing with regards to getting it to their bigs in Huff and Ike, like, this offense is going to change a lot. I would expect. I also think Texas. The reason that Texas was able, not necessarily the reason, but one of the ways that Texas was able to beat you guys is just the level of athletes that they have on their roster. And I don't know, like, Ike is obviously not a huge jump out of the gym athlete. He's not a super quick athlete, and I think. Mario is I really, really like the way that Mario played. He's going to be a great point guard for you guys as long as he stays. I think he's going to be really, really nice for whatever happens with him for the foreseeable future. But you guys just need another level of athlete because obviously Venters with the injuries and just like Tyon Grant Foster even, like, he was the level of athlete, but he didn't live up to the hype. Like, you just need a couple of those guys to be offensive athletes, I think, and along with like shooters. Like, there was just kind of a combination mismatch there a little bit to me. Like, Adam Miller obviously didn't have a huge year. It was just something that I think you guys can definitely build on. And I'm sure you can get athletes to the transfer portal and you guys have people coming in. Like, I'm sure the recruiting wise, Gonzaga will do just fine. But it's a question of how it'll build out because you just need to be able to extend the floor around Huff a little bit more, I think is what happened.
Yeah.
What'll have to happen.
And what we know for sure is, yeah, the Mario Huff pick and roll is going to be a thing of beauty next year.
Yep.
I really like the idea of, Huff in the low post, Fogel in the high post. He's just so comfortable around those high post areas in terms of pulling up and shooting. But yeah, you need to get shooting around him. And this team is going to go one of two ways. They may bring in another, big, strong, defensive-minded, power forward / center. Maybe some offense too, but kind of defensive-minded to cover up for some of Huff's weaknesses. In which case, defense will stay better and the offense will probably lag a little bit. Or we could put Huff at the true 5. Keep scoring. Bring in somebody that's more of maybe a stretch 4, or even put Fogel at the 4. Then this team is going to be really scary offensively, assuming we can hit our threes. But defense is going to be a challenge. So this team, there's a lot still to determine in what we're going to look like next year. But I'm not that worried about it. I think the move to the Pac-10 is going to be really good for us. It's still a weaker conference, so Gonzaga is going to continue to benefit from the fact that, I'm assuming there'll be a 5 or less loss team again next year with a good chance at a high seed going into the tournament. It's just about, I think, finding some more cornerstones for the next couple of years, because this team was pretty fractured. And talking about expectations, I was really pleased to see us get out of the first round. Would love to have made another Sweet 16. I think we should have beaten Texas, but our ticket was going to get punched one way or another. So I wasn't weeping too large of tears.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the idea of Huff playing more of a 5 and you guys going for more of a faster, returning to the kind of 90 points per game offense that you were. That's just,
yes.
I think Few is a coach that would like to do that. And I think defensively, like, he didn't really, I don't know, like, I don't love playing just like big man basketball, just giving it to Ike and letting him cook. And I think Mark Few probably doesn't love that either, with regards to him having not played that style for quite a long time in terms of just the speed of the game. So we'll see how it changes moving forward.
And Huff is, honestly, he's every bit the low post scorer, if not even a little better than Ike. He's just not quite as physically dominant.
Yeah.
But he's also not nearly the black hole. He keeps the ball moving, which is more of a diffuse style. He loves playing through the low post, but then back out to the 3-point shooters. So, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, our defense was really good this season, but there were also some very frustrating moments. I would love a return to form where I can complain about our defense, but every night we're scoring, 90 to 110 points. I would enjoy that very much.
That'd be lovely. All right. Before we get too caught up in anything else, let's jump to the last thing on the to-do list, which is talk about NBA expansion. It was officially announced, I think it was late last week, that the NBA is going to go to some sort of vote, basically for the owners to decide if they're going to expand. And it was pretty, I don't know if it was leaked or what happened, but it was basically like, hey, we are deciding if we're going to do this, and we are going to do this probably in Seattle and Las Vegas. I don't know that there are 2 other cities that they would even really consider. They might move some teams around if they do anything like that, but I would expect, and everybody else expects, that it's Seattle and Vegas in 2028 and 2029 if this goes through. So what were you thinking when that came out? And just kind of give me your overall thoughts so far.
It's a big deal. So, people have been jumping the gun in all sorts of ways on this. We did our annual Sonics redraft, last week, but we do that every year. I don't think we're jumping the gun in terms of saying this is a done deal. But this is really big news. So, yeah, what was leaked was that they were going to vote on whether or not to accept bids on 2 teams. So the actual vote as to whether or not to truly expand won't come for at least a year.
Yeah.
But it's a very big deal that this vote happened. And the big news, coming out, I think this was yesterday, 25th is when this happened, is, the vote passed. They got the 23 out of 26 necessary votes to pass this vote and declare that they are going to be accepting bids exclusively for teams in Seattle and Las Vegas. So you're 100% right. Those are the 2 cities. They're expecting the bids to be between $7 and $10 billion, which is, if you want to know why they would think about expanding, $14 to $20 billion is the answer.
Yeah.
Split that 26 ways. It's almost $1 billion per team. That's crazy. But yeah, it's very big news. I think the fact that this passed, that they are going to be accepting bids, makes it very, very likely that they will approve expansion, assuming they get a couple bids that they like. The odds of them just deciding, actually, we don't want to expand, if they get bids to their liking, I think is very minimal. So very big news. We'll see what happens in terms of, groups and who's putting money out to bid. I guess some news is that the Kraken group retooled. I think they added some funders and changed the name to like the One Roof Sports Group or something like that. So there's a lot of rumblings that they're going to make a move to offer a bid to also own the Sonics.
I'll offer a bid. It's not going to be for that much, but I'll put a bid in there.
What kind of private bank loan do you think I can get? Can I get $7 billion to buy the Supersonics?
I think I was going to say they'd probably be like, hey, that's a pretty good rate of return.
Yeah, that's an investment opportunity. We should go overseas and try to draw up some Europe money.
Let's go to Vegas, gamble our way to $7 billion, invest.
Buy the city of Las Vegas. That's too funny.
But yeah, no, it's gonna be an exciting time. I think as more and more things happen with regards to the Sonics, but still don't even know if it's gonna be the Sonics, but a Seattle basketball team coming back, like that is something that's probably been needed for the last decade. I think since the loss of the Sonics to OKC it's just been something that everybody wants in Seattle. So I think if this goes through, which is going to happen over the course of the next year, like you said, like it's not going to be hey, next week we're going to learn about this, but it's just a big step forward with regards to all the votes that are going on and progressing this potential for expansion. So the league is in a good spot with regards to the number of the amount of talent, the number of players that are able to be stars on teams and just be good role players is definitely there. The tanking thing is a bit of a concern for some people, and I think that is something that the NBA is going to probably solve in the next year or two. And then once that gets fixed, it's like, okay, at once imagining that they actually solved the problem. But when it gets fixed, I think the league will be very, very ready for expansion, and hopefully they can get it done before then.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I guess one last thing before we sign off, I just want to shout out our March Madness bracket. Obviously, we talked a lot about the Zags, but good job, I think, by us so far. We only got a combined 3 or 6 games wrong in the first round. So, we went 26 of 32 in round 1. Really great work. Things got a little messier in the second round.
I'm going to shout out my side of the bracket. It's a little less messy.
Way less messy. I do have it pulled up. So I will just say, yeah, shout out to you. We both lost 3 teams. I lost 4 in the second round. You lost 3 and I lost 4 in the second round. But you still have both your final 4 guys as well as 3 of your 4 Elite 8 guys. So You've done a much better job there. Gonzaga is the only one that let you down. I had Kansas making it all the way to the Final 4, which is a shame because they were a game-winning layup away from getting past. Past St. John's. That was a bummer. UCLA blew it for me against UConn, and then Florida not really showing up against Iowa. That was tough. So, my side of the bracket is much messier. I guess to shout out our best pick, I just want to shout out you picking High Point over Wisconsin. They played Arkansas tough in the next round.
I was ready for them to win that game against Arkansas, but Acuff has looked really good in this in these 2 games.
But I want to give you credit. I think picking High Point to the Sweet 16 was your best pick, even if it didn't quite happen.
Yeah, you had a couple good ones, but honestly, your side of the bracket was pretty chalk. I think if anybody had got if you had gotten Iowa over Florida, I would have been very, very surprised.
Yeah. If anything, I just wasn't chalk enough. I tried to get too creative, which is always my downside. But you know what else I want to shout out? We literally talked about this, and we spoke this into existence in a real way. We talked about picking all the 9s over the 8s, and all 4 9 seeds won. 4 for 4.
Yeah.
We picked all 4 of them. So
big.
If anybody was listening to that and got inspired and put a 14 parlay together, you are welcome.
The better we do on this, the more news we get. The people will see Sound Up Seattle bracket on ESPN Tournament Challenge, and they'll be like, oh my God, who are those guys? And they'll check us out. So, the better we do on this each year, the better that our publicity looks.
Once we get the Illini Arizona championship game, I'll be willing to brag for real.
All right. You good before I sign us out?
I'm all good.
All right. Well, for John Carey, I am Tyler Cartwright. This has been the Sound Up Seattle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode of Sound Up Seattle, please feel free to drop a like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, do all the good stuff. Drop a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to this pod. We do this live usually every Wednesday or Thursday. It really depends on our schedule. So Thursdays have been more recent ones, but it may change. I got volleyball coming up in the springtime, so who knows? You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at SoundUpSeattle, all lowercase, all one word. You can email us questions, comments, concerns, excitement about the Sonics coming back at soundupseattle@gmail.com. You can find me, Tyler, at TyCart50, everywhere it's important. And you can find John
I should be watching an open day Mariners, but to be honest, I'm going to be watching Sweet 16 basketball.
Got to have 2 TVs, man. Got to get out the laptop.
Critical.
All right, with all that being said, it's got to be a go Nerds, baby. Opening day.
Go Nerds.